Those leaves on your lawn are the best free soil you will ever get. Most people bag them up and put them out on the curb. Leaves hold moisture in your soil, feed it for free, and bring the worms up. But leave them wet and matted, and they will sit there for a year doing nothing. And 2 trees on your street are a genuine problem. So here is the whole thing in 4 steps. Whether yours are usable at all, how to mix them, which 2 trees to be careful with, and the one time you should not use leaves in your garden at all. Stay to the end and you will get all 4 on one screen. The mix ratio, which leaves need composting first, the crops that tolerate walnut, and the one situation where leaves do more harm than good. Screenshot it and take it out to the pile.
Leaves that have been on the lawn since last fall, can I use them to make compost? So absolutely, you can use whatever you want to make compost. The question is, how wet are they? So when they fell on the ground, they were dry. But if the winter had snow and then melted and then those leaves became moist and damp, what happens in the forest is that those things start to produce what's called leaf mold over time. They decompose, they get moist, they kind of cake together a bit, which makes them hard to decompose. So your options are, if they're drier, if they aren't really that wet, if they're a little bit on the dry side because maybe they've been laying out and now the sun has dried them out a little bit, try composting them with your food scraps or whatever other nitrogen source you have. And if it gets too wet or stinky, that means that those leaves were just a little bit too wet, and just add a bit more dry material, whatever you can find locally as a dry material. Another option, if they are super wet, some people would put them in a pile and make leaf mold, but another thing you could do is to blend them up, and some people use their lawnmower to do this, and then bury that in your soil, and it kind of produces a kind of leaf mold in place that will retain soil moisture because it's holding moisture. It provides nutrients, and then lots of worms will come up and turn all of that into composting in place for your plants. All kinds of beneficial bacteria will be there. So those are 2 things that you could do with that.
Say yours are dry enough to compost. Then the next question is how much of them to use, because leaves are the brown half of the pile, and the ratio is where most compost goes wrong.
So the question was, assuming we have the 2-to-1 ratio of brown to green, is it better to have several inch thick layers rather than just having it mixed up or in thinner layers? My husband has suggested just measuring in buckets, so the layers would be really thin. Okay, so really what this comes down to is when you're mixing this compost, whatever is more convenient. So the ratio is there so that you get the right soil biology present. And so as long as you have the right ratio, it's going to break down. And the more that it's mixed together, the faster it's going to break down for sure. So a lot of people, what happens is they have a lot of material all at once, and so they take it out and they put these layers down. And the maximum layer that I talk about is 6 inches, which is 15 centimeters of greens, and then 12 inches on top of that, double of browns on top of that, 30 centimeters on top of that. But a lot of people don't have that amount of material all at once. So for instance, at our house, we go out and we take a bucket of compost, of food scraps, and dump it in the compost bin, and then we put 2 more bucketfuls of the brown material that we have because it weighs the same amount. And we know the ratio is right, but it's definitely mixing at a smaller scale, so that's fine. That's the benefit of thinner layers. They combine and decompose faster. This is why I can actually get compost out of my bin in less than a month, because by the time a couple weeks goes by, everything's already all mixed up. And that means that the thing I'm adding for food scraps is also kind of smallish. It's not a big apple. It's like chopped up apple, or it's chopped up whatever. It's not big chunks of things. So it's going to combine and it's going to mix and it's going to decompose faster. The drawback of thinner layers is it's harder to get the ratio just right. Because when you have thick layers, you're like, that's obviously 15 centimeters deep, and that's obviously 30 centimeters deep. But when you have thinner layers, it's a little bit harder to get that ratio right, but it's not impossible, so totally doable. And you can fix it later. If it gets too wet, you just add more dry. And if it gets too smelly, you just add more dry. And if it gets too dry and it's not decomposing fast enough, then you add a little bit of wet. So you can change it later when you go to turn it, all right? So just getting the ratio right is good, and if you have to mix it in smaller batches, that's quite all right.
That works for most leaves, but there are 2 trees where it does not. And if either is growing near you, this next part matters more than anything else in the video. So most leaves compost, oak needs shredding first, and walnut only goes where the crop can take it. There is one more situation though, and in this one, the answer is to skip leaf mulch entirely.
So she was kind of a 2-part question. She says, I understand that things do not grow well underneath oak trees and walnut trees. Is that because of large amounts of tannin in the leaves? Well, it may not be advisable to mulch with these leaves. Is it okay to use composted leaves from these trees? Now, we've talked a little bit about walnut trees in the past, so I just want to briefly go over some things that may not have been explicit when in the previous conversations and just reinforce what we've already said. So first of all, growing underneath oak trees and walnut trees. Of course, there's the issue of shade and how much space is actually available to grow under the tree. Within that shade is a question. You know, you might be able to grow greens under a tree, but is it wise to grow them under oak trees or walnut trees? It's not so wise, and for different reasons. So the reason why people say don't grow under oak trees is that oak trees really prefer a dry habitat, and if you water the roots of an oak tree a lot, you basically can get an oak root fungus and kill the tree. So a lot of people only plant drought-resistant plants underneath oak trees, and vegetable crops, you can probably tell from all the talk we do about watering, and we say, you know, 1 inch a week is about what vegetables prefer. That's not going to work for an oak tree. You're basically going to rot out that oak tree. So that's why people say don't grow under an oak tree. And then walnut trees are different. They have the allelopathic chemical in them that beats out other crops, basically. And so it inhibits other crops from maturing. So I wanted to talk about, previously we did talk about what crops could tolerate the walnut. And I have not tried this, I just want to make sure that's clear, but there is research that talks about the juglone that's in the walnut tree, that chemical that's allelopathic, and some flowers, some herbs, and some vegetable crops are able to tolerate that juglone. So you might be able to play around and see which one of these you might want to grow and just test it out. So if you're growing underneath a walnut tree or near a walnut tree, and granted, growing under a walnut tree is going to be challenging. There's going to be root systems everywhere competing for those nutrients. So, but you can grow near, you know, the drip line of the walnut tree and try that out. So that's why you don't plant under the trees. And then the second question was about the leaves. And while it may not be advisable to mulch with these leaves, is it okay to use composted leaves from these trees? So this kind of just depends on you. So there's 2 different factors here. Again, with the walnut, I wouldn't mulch with walnut unless you're mulching beds that you're only going to grow those crops that tolerate that juglone. So we talked about what were they? They were like beets, onions, squash and melons, carrot, parsnips, beans, and corn. So you might find that, oh, it would be interesting. You could do the trilogy of, you know, squash, beans, and corn and mulch it all with walnut leaves potentially, and it would still all thrive potentially. So again, I haven't tested it to tell you for sure, but that's what some of the other experiments have shown. So it's possible, but then if you ever want to grow anything else there, you don't want that mulch to build up and have that juglone nearby where you're going to maybe rotate crops and try something else in the future. And then the other thing to note is that while oak leaves are acidic, which is why people say it's not necessarily advisable to compost with those oak leaves, like they're really just heavily acidic, and which makes them a little bit allelopathic. there are some extension agents, and I know one in Oregon who says that when oak leaves are fully composted, that pH starts to neutralize, and it's not that big of a deal. So if you can shred your oak leaves and decompose them into compost, then adding those back into your plant bed should be okay. And there are people that say that, your pH is going to change in different layers of your soil. And so it's possible that the top layer, if you mulch a lot, but that top layer might be more acidic, and that further down is going to be more neutral. And it just is because of all of that built up mulch at the top. And so plants might still be able to thrive, even though they want a neutral pH. They might be finding that below that mulching layer, there's an area of soil that's where their root systems are, where it's an appropriate pH. So there's still, I think, a lot of testing around mulching and pH that should be done. And so there's nobody who has the absolute distinct answer to this, and we're still all experimenting with this. So I hope that gives you some background so you can make decisions for where you are. And we've talked about this idea of what you have available for compost, and some people, it's so interesting, like some people say, gosh, the only thing I have available for compost is oak leaves, and I don't have anything else. Is it okay if my compost is heavily oak leaves? And then other people say, I don't have any access to anything brown, I don't have any leaves, can I just compost with everything that's green? And so, wherever you are, I would say use the local materials as much as possible for your system. That's just going to make you the most sustainable system that you can find, and you can experiment with these things and try, one bed one way, one bed another way, and make some observations and then make some decisions from there.
So most leaves compost. Oak needs shredding first, and walnut only goes where the crop can take it. There is one more situation, though, and in this one, the answer is to skip leaf mulch entirely.
Is winter leaf mulch going to be an issue with harboring earwigs over the winter? They are a serious issue in this area, especially in long, cool, wet spring. Yeah, so this is a great question. So this is something that is specific to your area. So if you do find that a specific thing overwinters, I would probably not mulch. You could always cover the bed with some sort of landscape fabric over the winter. Like I said earlier, if you didn't get a chance to cover crop, but you had an area that you grew something and then you didn't have time to cover crop it, you might just take some landscape fabric or something else and just cover the bed so that the soil doesn't erode over the winter, and that way you're not harboring habitat for those earwigs. And then when you come back in the spring, you add a big dose of compost to invigorate the soil. So again, I'm going to go through, we're going to do a 2-part pest and disease video series, and I'm going to share with you life cycles of insects and how to interrupt those life cycles. And yeah, earwigs, if you have a really bad population of Japanese beetles, slugs, or earwigs, these are things that you might not want to be mulching quite as much. And we can talk about other ways to keep those populations low as well. So by looking at when they lay eggs and looking at ways to solarize the soil potentially is another thing that we talked about tonight a little bit, very briefly as well.
So the short version, the leaves on your lawn are free soil. You just have to know how wet they are, what to mix them with, and which tree they fell from. 1. Wet or dry. Crisp and rustling, compost them with your food scraps. Damp and caked, mow them and bury them, or pile them up for leaf mold. 2. The mix. 1 bucket of scraps to 2 buckets of leaves. 3. Check the tree. Oak, shred and compost it fully first and the pH neutralizes. Walnut, only where the crop tolerates jug loam. And 4, if earwids or slugs were bad last year, skip the leaf mulch entirely. Put landscape fabric down instead and give the bed a big dose of compost in spring. There it is, all 4 on one screen, exactly like I promised at the start. Take a screenshot of that and it goes out to the garden with you. Now imagine having that kind of answer for every problem in your garden. The pests, the soil, the watering, the timing, all of it. That's exactly what we built the Superfood Garden Summit for. 15 of the most trusted growers alive, each handing you the one thing that changed everything for them. And it's completely free. Here's a look. So what's actually inside the Superfood Garden Summit? Here's a look. Across 4 themes, you'll learn it all. Building living soil, growing abundance, turning your harvest into everyday meals and remedies, and using your garden to nourish your health and the people you love.
You'll learn from 15 of the most trusted teachers in regenerative gardening, herbal medicine, and home food production. Names like Charles Dowding, Ocean Robbins, Seja Popham, Kami McBride, Matt Powers, and many more, each sharing one practical, transformative lesson. Hosted by Denise Bynes, owner of Grow Your Own Vegetables, on a mission to help 1 million new gardeners grow their own food.
And you can watch all of it free together in your own 48-hour window. Go to growyourownvegetables.org/summit and start watching today.